When I was younger, I believed the world was simple. I believed strength meant defeating those who stood in front of you. I believed honor was found in battle, and purpose was found in revenge. My heart was filled with anger so deep that I could barely remember what peace felt like. Every day I woke up with a single thought burning inside my mind. I must defeat the man who killed my father. I must grow stronger, sharper, faster. I believed that when that moment finally arrived, when my blade reached the man I hated most, something inside me would finally settle. I believed the storm inside my chest would calm. But the truth is that hatred does not calm storms. Hatred feeds them. There was a time when I thought every man who stood between me and my goal was my enemy. Soldiers, warriors, strangers from distant lands. I looked at all of them through the same narrow lens. If they threatened my path, they were enemies. If they stood in battle against me, they were enemies. My world was divided into two sides. The side that helped me reach revenge, and the side that stood in the way. That way of thinking made everything easier at first. It removed doubt. It removed hesitation. If someone was an enemy, you did not need to understand them. You did not need to listen to them, you simply fought them. But that kind of thinking slowly destroys the soul. Hatred feels powerful in the beginning. It gives you energy. It sharpens your focus. It convinces you that you have purpose. But hatred is a fire that burns everything around it, including the person who carries it. The longer you hold on to it, the more it consumes you. It blinds you to the humanity of others. It blinds you to the humanity inside yourself. I remember nights where I could not sleep because the faces of the people I had killed appeared in my dreams. At first I told myself they deserved it. They were enemies. They chose to stand in battle. But the longer those dreams continued, the more something inside me began to crack. Those men had lives before the battlefield. They had families waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. They had hopes, fears, and stories I would never know. Yet I had reduced them all to a single word: enemy. It is easy to use that word, easy to place it on someone you do not understand, easy to use it as an excuse for violence. But the moment you truly look into another person's eyes and realize they are as human as you are, the word begins to lose its power. My father once told me something I did not understand at the time. He told me that a true warrior does not need a sword. When I first heard those words, I thought he was wrong. I thought he was naive. The world we lived in was filled with violence. Kingdoms rose and fell through battle. Armies marched across lands, leaving destruction in their wake. How could anyone survive without fighting? But the older I became, the more I realized what he meant. A true warrior is not someone who is skilled at killing. A true warrior is someone who understands the weight of life. Someone who recognizes that every life carries value beyond the battlefield. When you truly understand that, the idea of enemies begins to fade. The world teaches us to divide people into sides, into tribes, into nations, into beliefs. Once those divisions exist, it becomes easier to justify cruelty, easier to believe that suffering on the other side does not matter as much as suffering on your own side. But the truth is much more uncomfortable. The people you call enemies often believe they are protecting something important to them. Their homes, their families, their dreams. In their eyes, they are not villains. They are defenders. This does not mean that every action people take is justified. The world contains cruelty and injustice, but labeling people as enemies prevents us from understanding the deeper reasons behind conflict. If you want to end violence, you must first understand the hearts of the people involved in it. There was a moment when I finally understood the meaning behind my father's words. It was not during a battle. It was not during a moment of victory or defeat. It was during a quiet realization that the path I had walked for so long had brought me nothing but emptiness. Revenge had been the center of my life. It had guided my decisions. It had shaped the person I became. But when the moment of revenge finally slipped away, when the man I hated died without me striking the final blow, I was left with nothing. No purpose, no direction, no peace. That emptiness forced me to confront a painful truth. Hatred had stolen years of my life. It had turned me into someone I barely recognized. That realization did not come with instant clarity. It came slowly, like the first light after a long night. I began to question the beliefs I had carried for so long. I began to ask whether the cycle of violence we lived in could ever truly end if everyone continued to see each other as enemies. If you look at the history of war, you will notice a pattern. One side attacks, the other side retaliates. One generation suffers. The next generation grows up carrying the pain of that suffering. That pain becomes anger. That anger becomes more violence. And the cycle continues. It is a chain that stretches across centuries. Breaking that chain requires something incredibly difficult. It requires someone to step back and refuse to continue the pattern. Refusing to see enemies does not mean ignoring injustice. It means refusing to let hatred guide your actions. It means searching for solutions that do not rely on endless revenge. Imagine two men standing across from each other with swords drawn. Both believe the other is the enemy. Both believe victory requires the death of the other. As long as that belief remains, the outcome will always be the same. Violence creates more violence. But imagine one of those men lowering his sword and choosing a different path. At first, it may seem like weakness. The world often confuses mercy with weakness. But true strength is not measured by how many enemies you defeat. It is measured by your ability to rise above hatred. Choosing to have no enemies is not easy. It requires patience in moments where anger feels justified. It requires empathy in situations where cruelty seems easier. It requires courage to stand against the expectations of a violent world. But it is the only path that leads to lasting peace. Think about the relationships in your own life. How often do small conflicts grow larger simply because pride refuses to step aside? How often do arguments continue long after their original meaning has faded? These conflicts may not involve swords or armies, but they follow the same pattern. When you see someone as an enemy, even in small ways, it becomes easier to justify harsh words and harmful actions. But when you remind yourself that the person standing in front of you carries their own struggles and fears, something changes. Understanding replaces anger. Compassion replaces hostility. This does not solve every problem instantly, but it opens the door to solutions that violence could never achieve. There was a time when I believed the only way to survive in a brutal world was to become brutal myself. But now I understand that brutality only ensures the world remains brutal. If you truly want a better future, you must become the kind of person who refuses to create more suffering. Choosing to have no enemies does not mean life will suddenly become peaceful. The world will still contain conflict. There will still be people who misunderstand your intentions. There will still be moments when anger rises inside your chest. But the difference lies in how you respond to those moments. Instead of letting anger control you, you pause. Instead of reacting with violence, you search for understanding. Instead of continuing the cycle, you choose to break it. That choice may feel small at first, but every cycle of violence that ends begins with someone choosing a different path. So when you hear the words, "have no enemies," do not mistake them for weakness. They are a challenge to see the world with clearer eyes, a challenge to recognize the humanity in every person you encounter, a challenge to become strong enough to resist hatred even when hatred feels justified. Because the greatest battle any person can fight is not against another human being. It is against the darkness inside their own heart. And when you win that battle, when you truly understand the value of life and refuse to treat others as enemies, you become something far greater than a warrior. You become someone capable of building a better world.